Today, we're going to tackle a challenge that trips up even the smartest people out there: how to speak with confidence when all the pressure is on. So, how do we actually fix it? Well, let's dive in.
Oh, you know that feeling, right? You're in a big meeting, you're talking to a client, you're giving a presentation, you're trying to make a point, and then, poof, your mind just goes completely blank. You're stuck. It happens to everyone, and it is so frustrating.
And what's the biggest sign of that internal panic? It's hesitation and repetition. These two things, they're like the twin signals that can just tank your credibility no matter how much you actually know about your topic.
So what is this really telling your audience? I mean, when you hesitate or you start repeating yourself, you're not just buying yourself some time, you're basically sending out these little signals of nervousness. It completely breaks the flow of information. And, it makes your listeners start to doubt what you're saying.
So what's really going on here? What's the root cause? Well, a lot of the time, it comes down to a mix-up between two different kinds of language. See, the key isn't just knowing more words, it's about knowing the right words for that specific moment. And that brings us to our diagnosis: getting the difference between vocabulary and register.
We need to get a handle on these two categories: vocabulary and register. And honestly, just understanding this one distinction is the first huge step toward building a communication toolkit that is absolutely unshakable.
Okay, first up we have vocabulary. Pretty simple. This is your everyday language. These are the comfy, all-purpose words and phrases we all lean on. Think of simple things like "nice to see you," or asking a question like, "So, what brings you here today?" It's the absolute foundation of any conversation.
And then we have register. Now, this is the specialized stuff. This is the language of your profession, all the jargon, the technical terms that basically scream, "I'm an expert." For a doctor, it's words like treatment plan or inflammation. For a software developer, it might be API or backend. This is the language that really builds your authority.
All right, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now let's talk about the prescription. And it's this beautifully simple but really powerful idea that it's going to completely change how you prep for those big, high-stakes conversations. It's the 80-20 rule. You've probably heard of this for other things, like productivity. But applying it to how we speak, it's a total game changer. The basic idea is that a tiny bit of focused effort can give you the huge majority of your results.
And this chart here just lays it all out perfectly. In pretty much any conversation, about 80% of what you say, that huge slice right there, is built on a really small set of core phrases. The other 20%, that's for all the extra stuff. So the takeaway is crystal clear. If you can master that core 80%, you're on the fastest possible path to confidence.
The strategy couldn't be simpler. You can forget about memorizing a dictionary. Instead, you just need to figure out the 10 or 20 words that you use all the time. Practice those until they feel like second nature.
So here it is. Here's your mission. I want you to pick your top 10 to 20 core vocabulary words, your greetings, your transition phrases, that kind of stuff. Then do the exact same thing for your professional register, the key terms that are central to your job. That right there becomes your go-to communication toolkit. You just have to practice it until you can use it without even thinking.
Okay, so let's put this all together into a complete game plan. We can actually break down any high-stakes conversation into 6 reliable steps. Think of this as your treatment plan for any communication anxiety.
Here's the framework. First, you greet and introduce yourself. Simple enough. Then you ask questions, and this is key, you actively listen. Third, you show some empathy to build that connection. Fourth, you speak at length, and this is where you really use your core register. And finally, you manage your time and make sure you cover your key points. This 6-step structure, it's your safety net.
So, the next time you're prepping for a big conversation, don't just go over the topic. Use that prep time to zero in on the core vocabulary and register words you're going to need for your 80-20 toolkit. I'm telling you, this tiny shift in how you prepare can make all the difference in the world.
Building confidence isn't about becoming a totally different person. It's really just about having a smarter strategy. That core toolkit of words, the ones that are going to carry you through 80% of any conversation, they're already there. You just need to identify them. So what are they?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for OET tips, medical English. Like, share, and follow for more.